Hear me okay? Whoa. I can hear me. So, hello everybody. Thank you for coming to the show. This is Going Deep and helping to empower our users. Again, thank you for coming. I'm Joseph Siegmann. For those of you who don't know me, I don't do a lot of talks at Derbycon. As a matter of fact, this is my first one. Most of it I just do local things. If you want to get a hold of me, there's some contact information that'll be up there again later. A little bit about me. I am a CISO for a large international retailer, although today is my day off, so I'm just representing me. I've been in IT for 25 plus years, and I've done security for probably 20 plus of that, to some capacity or another. I started a few companies of my own, and been doing that for a long time. I still have one today. And then I kind of have had a real job like most all of you. Wrote my first program when I was 8 or 9, and I've learned a few other languages in between then and now. It's not what I do with my day job, but it's what I love to do. So instead of watching sports and things like that, I sit at home code. I'm a dad. I try to be a loving husband, which are probably the most complicated things and tough things in my life ever. I love scuba diving. If you didn't notice the picture on the front, that was me sitting at about 85, 90 feet in the front of the Spiegel Grove, for those of you diving. I love things geeky. I love all things geeky. And with that being said, because this is pretty much all I do, a little bit of advice is as you're kind of going through your journeys and whatever it is you're doing, as you're going through your career, my suggestion is to take a moment, stop, look for something to measure things, right? Certifications. So yes, I have 26 certifications. I just kind of got them a little bit here and there through the time, right? So as a CISO, I will tell you that that helps you through your career and it will help you in the future. It helps us in communicating, and that's probably the most important piece here, is that if I come to you and talk to you and I say, hey, are you a network guy? You're like, yeah, I might ask, like, have you done your CCNA? You've done your Network Plus, things like that. It tells me where you stand so I don't have to go back to like square one, right? So like even I'll tell you in getting ready for this talk, I have like way more slides than I'll ever get through in like 10 hours. But the point here is I start kind of basic and I kind of move on, and there's some more complicated things in there, so this will move a little quickly. I apologize. But I'm just trying to get the point across for a larger crowd. So take the time, try to invest in yourself. I know some of them are just there for paper and money-making schemes, but they do support you. You are that important. If you want to get a hold of me, again, here's my contact information, my GitHub. I'm on Twitter. I don't post much. If the things I'm going to show you, I will have stuff out on GitHub later, not there today. So what are we going to do here today? One, we're going to go deep. We're going to talk about some IDS, IPS sensors, how they kind of work. We're going to go through some full packet capture stuff. We're going to pull the full PCAPs. We're going to actually look at them. And I'm going to show you how you can do this in your place, wherever that may be. Second, we're going to talk about empowering our users, right? So from where I started, doing PC support and running my own companies, fixing whatever it was, writing code, whatever it took, right, to get the job done. And today my role is completely different. But I'll tell you, I have a different view of the universe than a lot of people because I've sat on all spectrums, and some of you may share that with me, and you may relate to what I'm kind of getting at here. And then lastly, I hope that I can maybe inspire you to share whatever it is that you know. Because as I talk to everybody here at Derbycon, and I've been here for, done the last 5 of them, these talks are great, these people are great, and the best part about it is the people, right? I mean, look to your left, look to your right. I mean, this is the most powerful thing in this room, right, is us. And that sharing and standing on each other's shoulders and really learning. Because there's a few of us that are the really smart guys, and we put them out there and we share. And this is my ability to kind of say, look, I've done a whole lot, and people are like, you need to share more. So I'm like, okay, so here it goes, right? So this is my first thing at Derby for at least sharing. All right, so let's go deep. So just so you understand where I'm kind of going with the demo here, I have a bunch of little like makeups here. The beginning part of my demo, I basically have 2 Linux boxes. They're running Fedora Linux. I got a Windows 7 system, and then I'm using Security Onion as my basic sensor for monitoring for IDS, IPS. The reason why I picked Security Onion is you can go home and download this distro, right? It's an Ubuntu distro. It's got a whole bunch of security tools. Now, what we're going to look at today is Snort and Bro, along with like NetSniff NG. NetSniff NG is the thing that does the full packet captures on the system, and that's how we're going to pull the PCAPs out. You can put this in line at the edge of your house or in your company. You can mirror port. And where you can do, and then the other things on there like ELSA, Squeal, CatMe, those are tools to basically look through them, and then CatMe is the ability to get things out. And then I added another utility that I wrote called Siggy Tools. It's just kind of a wrapper of a couple of different things to basically export the PCAP off of that, and you can find that out on the GitHub site. Again, a little bit more on Security Onion. It's written by a guy named Doug Burks, so this is that whole part of like standing on, other giant shoulders. Doug used to work at Mandiant, and he just runs Security Onion all the time, right? It's a great product. It's not the end all of end all, but boy, it opens up a whole new world to everybody and really gives you a way to look at things. So, show of hands, anybody know what Security Onion is? Just good? Sweet! Okay. Hopefully you're all as big of a geek as I am. This will be good. Okay. Yes, that's the install going at like 900 times the speed, just in case. Taps, just because somebody mentioned it to me. Dual com, it's like $250 on the far left. Obviously, you can use a hub. You guys use Security Onion, so you're probably already kind of familiar with most of this stuff. There's a whole lot of commercial things. They're in no particular order. I just copied and pasted off the internet. I'm not, promoting anybody. And then another recommendation somebody made to me is apparently there's a TP-Link 8-port gigabit switch for $33 that actually has a managed interface that you can mirror port. All right. So real quick, for those who don't know, right, typical IDS configurations, right? So in everything I'm going to show, this is going to be a NIDS or a network-based intrusion detection system. There are other types of IDSs like HIDs, which are host-based intrusion detection systems. We're not going to talk of those, so we'll forget about those today. And the general kind of setup that you want to do with a network-based intrusion detection system is you kind of, or at least one that's passive, is to kind of put it behind the firewall, either at the switch, right behind your firewall. This is kind of their general way people do it. You can put them in front too if you want to capture different things. But generally, you're going to see it behind the firewall. That switch is either going to be a tap, maybe a managed switch, or something like that. The other side is there's an IPS, is an intrusion prevention system. These have the ability then to actually block the packets, hence the little ones and zeros getting stopped at the IDS device there. And you generally will put those, again, right behind the firewall, which you put them in line. They have rules to kind of block and deny things. These are more your commercial things. Right? So let's go ahead and get into some demos here. So I'm going to start the journey out with, like everybody does, with a little bit of a hello world type scenario, but in this case we're going to do it from the network perspective, which is ping, right? And I know it sounds really simple, but you're going to see kind of why I picked that in this case, right? So hopefully this shows up okay on these screens. And then so on the right-hand side, what you really have is you have one sensor, you have Snort and Bro monitoring on the two windows on the right. On the left-hand side, bottom left, you're going to see PC number 2. It's going to receive the pings. So I'm doing a TCP dump for protocol 1, which is ICMP. PC 1's then going to go ahead and do 3 pings to PC number 2. Right? So you see this guy's got the pings that are going, and then PC number 2, for everyone, it sees an echo request, then you see an echo reply, right? Your standard thing. Now notice that Snort went ahead and threw out 3 different alerts, right? So for every ping, Snort said, hey, I see this, I see this, I see this. But notice Bro did not put in anything, right? Now Bro eventually will put something out there. It just takes a little bit for it to close the session, right? Now the interesting part is you really got to kind of ask yourself, why, right? Is that happening in that way? Yeah, don't ask. So something we should all do, right, when we're thinking about security devices, it doesn't matter if it's an offensive tool or a defensive tool, right? We always kind of have to ask ourselves, when it does whatever it does, right, we always want to know what is it doing for us and what is it not doing for us, right? So every time I talk to a vendor and they come in and they say, hey, my thing stops 100% of everything. And I go, 1, bull, right? And then 2, I love your stuff. Now tell me what it doesn't do. right? Because especially as a CISO, and I'm sitting there, my job is to protect the entire organization, is I have to weigh everything on a basis of risk, right? So when I look at stuff, I want to know, well, what is it doing for me and what is it not doing for me? And if that vendor can't tell me what it doesn't do, then they don't know what they have, right? And I always tell them, go back, get your smartest guy that wrote the thing, bring him back to me, and then we'll have a conversation. And that's where we'll start, right? Because I already love your stuff. This is great. You know, it's a matter of how much you're going to cover in my environment, right? Because there's always going to be a gap, right? That's the whole reason why we all have to buy insurance, right? Okay, so let's talk real quick about like the general detection methods of like how IDS, IPS sensors kind of work. They all generally kind of fall into three categories, right? Signature-based, statistical anomaly-based, and then kind of protocol, right? So your signature-based are things like Snort. A lot of the commercial things do the same things, right? They basically have rules that say look for ABC followed by 1, 2, 3, and if I see it, do something, right? The anomaly-based are watching your patterns of your traffic, looking for A talking to B, and then all of a sudden if it talks to E, it wants to throw an alert because something changed, right? And your protocol are kind of more like Bro. So let's do that. Let's look at Bro code real quick. And I'm not getting into it deep, and let's go look at a Snort signature, and then we're going to kind of dig a little deeper here, right? So Bro, unlike a signature, right, based system, Bro understands the protocols. And what you're looking at here is this is actually probably the main piece of code for Bro, right? So Bro is this back-end engine. It understands actually the protocols that it kind of chews into. And in this case is a very, very simple example, right? And I just kind of blew up the pieces from something that writes out what's called the Bro con log, which is the main connection log. Bro tracks everything, gets the authoritative truth to your network. Go look up Liam Randall and see about the 100 videos he's got on the internet on Bro. And you'll notice here that, with these, connections, you're doing kind of like an if statement, right? So it's like up here you say, if transport equals TCP, go ahead and set these flags. Down here you can't see it, but it says if is UDP, do whatever, else, right, return other, right? So again, it's a programming language. So Bro gives you this full capability to actually write code based upon the protocols that it sees. So you can actually do things like extract the file that it sees in stream, hash the file, look it up at BT, and then depending upon the result at BT, you can throw an alert, right? So you can do very complex functionality with Bro because it allows you to do some programming, right? A little bit more Bro on Bro here is this is on Security Onion. All your Bro logs are under /nsm/bro/logs current. They sit there for an hour. Bro rotates everything every hour and kind of compresses them and puts them off into a date timestamp directory. You'll see here, this is the Bro con log. It shows your source, destination, IP ports, that kind of stuff, what kind of protocol. You also will see things like if it understands the protocol, right? So these are saying, hey, I see a UDP message here. It noticed that these are DNS. If it sees it and notice that the protocol is DNS, it will then write into the DNS log maybe further information such as the A record or the PTR record or something like that, right? So it's actually extracting the metadata from the information to kind of give you a little bit more analysis. And the things you would look in Bro for is like, watch your HTTP streams, and you should only see HTTP protocols. But the funny part is you're going to see a whole bunch of things where Bro goes, I don't know what the hell this is. Right? And it'll just mark them as blank, which should make you pay attention, right? Because most people don't run non-HTTP things over 80 or 443, which actually they do. Go look at, streaming video, right? So it'll be interesting if you go look at it. And then everything, of course, that Bro thinks is weird is, well, in the weird log. Okay. So Snort. So this is the ping example that I did. This is the actual Snort rule that fires, but I wanted to kind of walk through it so you understand like why it fired, because I'm going to show you a problem next, right? So this is the alert that fired, and then this is the real quick Snort rule, and I just want to go over the parts in red, right? So what Snort does is it says alert, right? It can drop and do other things with the things. If you put the Snort in line, you can actually block stuff if you want. It looks for an ICMP message. It's looking for anything coming from the external network to our home network, which is anything on the RC private ranges. It'll spit out this message for any ICMP type 8. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's the echo request. So this it doesn't fire on the reply. This fires on the request, right? And then inside the content, it's going to look for the hex values of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, so on and so forth, right? Now, just so you're aware, the sensor that I'm running has 45,000 signatures on it. It has the Emerging Threats Pro subscription sitting on it. So this is the latest and greatest feed, right? And in there you can see here, we got like Microsoft Windows pings, we have Linux, Unix pings, all kinds of Windows ping stuff, right? But I'm going to show you a problem that I'm dumbfounded by this, right? So let's go ahead and grab the snort rule in the PCAP, because I just want to kind of dig a little deeper so you can see what's in it, right? So on Security Onion, there's a web interface that's exposed, and from it you can get to some tools. So here we're going to go and log into what's called Squirt, and Squirt will kind of keep track of all of the snort signatures that kind of fire up. Again, this is part of Security Onion, so this is all right out of the box. Just install it, it's there, right? If you scroll down, you can see here's that ICMP info ping information. There's the actual rule that it fired. If you click on the link there, you can pivot to something else called ELSA, which is more of a database-driven interface for watching things. And then it kind of groups stuff either by, and you can do some queries here. This stuff's okay, right? There's some better tools out there, but for free, this stuff is rocking, right? From here, you can then pivot over to something called CapMe, and CapMe will try to actually export the PCAP for you. Now, in this case, CapMe doesn't work, right? And that's because CapMe kind of wants a source and destination port associated with the IP address. It doesn't handle ICMP messages very well. This was my driver a long time ago for why I wrote the SIGI tools. Right? So let's go ahead and let's show you that piece of it, right? So if you go to the IP address, when you install SIGI tools, it just goes to /SIGI. On the same site, from here you go to this export PCAP, you put all of the same information in here, right? And I'm just going to grab the beginning time, ending times here, and put them in. And it'll tell you, the SIGI tools will tell you like how much data is actually on the sensor. It'll tell you how far back you can go, when you can go, that kind of stuff. There's some various parameters you can do, so you can put a starting time and just say run for like 60 seconds or 600 seconds, however you want to do it. You can then queue this. It'll then put the job down into a queue. It runs in the background like a daemon. There's some jobs that we run. We have some sensors that are in like the 25 terabytes or more. So if you run large jobs, they take a while. We generally will start the jobs, go to lunch, and then come back and look and see what we got, right? So if from here you can go ahead and you can click on the little link, download the PCAP, and then we can open that up. So let's go ahead and open that into Wireshark because we downloaded it. And then we can go ahead and see here's the echo requests and echo replies, right? And this is all the communication going back and forth, right? And if you look down to the bottom here, you're going to see that 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, right? This is in the context in hex. Right? Cool? Okay, so let's do one more, right? Let's do a Windows ping. So this is a Windows 7 box. I tried it with Windows 10 also, do the same thing, right? So what we're going to do, same thing as before, we're going to run snort, we're going to watch the alerts. On PC number 2, we're going to actually do the TCP dump. This time something just a little different, just to show you a small variance. If you use this -w command, it will write the file. Instead of printing it out to the screen, it'll actually put your PCAP to an actual file. And then on the Windows 7 box, so as I scroll through other right commands here, we're going to ping Windows 7 to PC number 2. Now notice in this case, you got nothing, right? And you got to kind of ask yourself, like, why? Like we saw in the list, it supported Windows. It supported all kinds of Windows things, but apparently it doesn't pick up on this one, right? So while I'm here real quick, I'm going to explain why that didn't work. But real quick deviation. That TCP dump, here's a little trick for you. Take a picture of that. If you want to write it to a file and output it to the screen at the same time, you can take TCP dump, do the -w with a hyphen after it. It puts it out to standard out. You can then pipe it to T. T will then put it to a file, and then you can pipe it back to TCP dump, tell it with a -r, which is a replay, and that'll suck it back in and put it back to the screen. So now you can do both functions at the same time, right? Just kind of a small trick. I Googled it. It's pretty quick to find if you don't miss it here. Okay, so why is it not working, right? Because when I think about this, there's like 45,000 signatures. I just downloaded this yesterday. You would think that somebody would have in the last, 4 or 5 years, maybe made a rule that alerted on Windows 7 pinging opposed to just maybe Windows 95 or whatever the hell that stuff is, right? So let's go and look behind the scene a little bit here. So here is the PCAP from the second machine that we just saved, right? We're going to open this up and we're going to go look at the echo request and the echo reply. Now notice here what the hex values are, right? It's not 10, 11, 12, 13. So let's pull up our old rule, right? So this is the Unix rule, right? This is what it had, right? So this is one good reason for pulling out the PCAPs, which is sometimes the alerts and the information it gives you isn't enough to quite figure out the example, but in this case, we want to write our own rules. So let's do that, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to copy what is over here. We're just going to do this real simple. We're going to go ahead and make another one, but we're just going to change the name so it spits out the correct message. And then what we're going to do, we're going to keep it type 8, which is again the echo request, right? And then we're going to go ahead and throw in the 61, so on and so forth, just matching exactly like this. Hex pattern is here. If it's between, these pipes, you use hex. If it was a string, you would just type it in, right? So now we're going to take this, we're going to throw this back on the sensor. If you modify rules in Security Onion, you put them under the, etsy NSM rules / local.rules, and then you'll go and run rule update, which is what's happening here real quick. And then it'll go ahead and restart snort. Their videos, I should just fast forward, but it's kind of fun to watch. All right, so let's do it again, right? So this is our Windows 7 box. There's snort listening on the right. So this is our Windows 7 box. We're now going to go ahead and ping from one side to the other. And we should see our alerts, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, because Windows always does 4 pings, right? Pretty cool, right? Hopefully you guys do that on your own. Now, real quick comment here, right? Which is, and this is kind of will be one of my points in the end, which is you can't always trust what's out there, right? The beauty, at least, to snort and the open source stuff is all the rules are there for you to see. I can tell you, we run a whole lot of corporate and commercial stuff. You don't always know what's in them, right? So it's kind of like trust us. I'm like, well, okay, well, I trust you, but like when I go ahead and look at this, I was a bit shocked that this wasn't there, to be really honest with you. Right? I mean, I don't dig into this thing every day. It's not my daily thing I do. But I was a bit shocked that wasn't there. So if I would love, I was talking to some other folks in the crowd here over the last couple of days, I would love to maybe set up or talk to the ET folks and see if we can, as a community, try to make a better pool of this kind of stuff. Because and my understanding is that there's only a few people working on this stuff. And if all of us do a little bit, maybe it'll make it better for everybody. Right? Now, I realize this is just ping, but there's got to be a lot of things that are also missing. I mean, if they're missing ping, I don't know. That's just my opinion. Okay. So let's do some story time. Right? So we're all sitting in our comfy chairs. We're all sitting here. We show up to work. We're going to do some, we're all analysts in the company, right? And we load up our machine. We pull up our sensor. And we're watching our logs. Hopefully it's a better interface than this. And then all of a sudden, bam, right? We get this alert, right? And it says, oh my God, right? We have a Trojan. It's an IRC NIC change on non-standard port, right? Sounds really bad, right? And any of you guys that look at this kind of stuff, you probably see this all day long. So we look at this and we say, okay, well, whoever this is at 192.168.15.143 is going to this non-standard port, right? Because IRC runs on 6667 and 6669. And so we look at this and we say, okay, well, let's get some context around this. So let's follow this super handy dandy link out to emerging threats, and let's see what they have to tell me, because they obviously wrote the rule. So we can pull up a browser, we can go out to the page, and we can, okay. Well, it gives me the snort rule at least, which doesn't help me a lot, right? It tells me maybe why it fired, but sure doesn't tell me any more context around if it's good or bad or whatnot. So let's see. All right. So let's go figure out what else we can do, right? So let's go back into Security Onion. Let's go to the standard web page. Let's go into Squirt. We'll go see if we can find the actual same message. You only get one guess what the password is. Okay. So here we are. We find the IRC NIC change, right? So again, there's our snort rule. There's our handy link that tells us almost nothing or what the snort rule is. Here you'll see each communication path that happens in Squirt. And if you kind of expand it, you'll see the actual, individual session. You can click on that event ID right there. And what it's going to do is that's another way to pivot over to CAPME. Now this time, notice that CAPME did actually export the PCAP for you. And wonderfully, it put it in this nice display, right? So this is very similar to Wireshark if you do TCP follow, which we'll do in a second. And blue sessions are your client talking to the outside, red is server coming back. And so this is kind of a handy way of getting to the data really quickly. At the top of the link, you can click it and you can download the PCAP just like it did there. All right. And so just from a different perspective, I'm going to show you how to do the same thing with SIGI tools, right? So I'm going to hit close. I'm going to go back to CAPME because I want the start end times and the addresses. I'm going to go back over to SIGI tools, but I'm going to do something a little different here with this one, right? So CAPME is going to give you the individual session of that move, but what if I want to do like a broader search, right? What if I want to look at everything that system did to that port? Because maybe what I want to see is, well, what other context is in this story, right? Because we want to know a little bit more, right? So I'm just going to copy the source, start time, end time, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in the source address and the destination address without the ports, right? So CAPME wants the ports, right? Remember, so it's going to give you the individual session. With the SIGI tools, it'll let you do any request you want at all, right? To that extent, too, you can even do like a post request to it. So if you have a SIM, which is what kind of we do in our world, we even take like our firewall logs. So our network guys, they call us and they're like, hey, we want to do a packet capture or something, right? So instead of they're sitting over the keyboard and, you're on the phone with the other guy and you're like, okay, ready? Now! No, I mean now, right? I mean, how many people do this when they cap and patch, right? It's a nightmare. Just go put the sensor and let it just watch everything, go to the firewall logs, right-click, export, and you get everything. It'll dump everything for that session, right? So here real quick, this is what it went ahead, it grabbed all the files, it downloaded it, and it's blowing by, I apologize. But what it was showing you is that it pulled up something totally different than what you saw with the CAPME, right? And that's because it's seeing the whole message and it was looking at some other communication that machine was doing. And now what I'm doing in the video here is I'm going back and I'm going to put in the finer detail of the source and destination ports, and you're going to get exactly the same thing that CAPME gave you, right? They're both good tools. They just have, again, limits, right? So you always want to understand how far they go, what they can do, and what they can't do for you. Because in crunch time, hopefully none of you had to, deal with that pucker factor 10 moment. But when you do, you want to know where to go, when to go, and how to get it as quick as possible. And you want to be able to see it from every angle, right? So, okay, so we downloaded the PCAP. We're going to look inside of it. We're going to right-click. We're going to say follow TCP stream, which is what everybody does. And again, just like the other screen before, you see here's the NIC anonymous. This is how the snort rule fired. That's what it saw, right? And so we're going to scroll through this, and we're going to put some context around what we saw in here. We're going to try to determine, is this really a bot? Is this really being evil? Or is it okay? It looks like it's kind of streaming. Oh, wait, no. No, look, it's ESPN. It really is evil. So, okay. I'm not a sports guy. Only if I play them. Cool? Okay, so just to show you a little bit more here, if you go back to Squirt will, if you drill down into it, show you how it fired the rule, right? So if you find that rule, you find one of the sessions, and you expand it, and then you hit the little RT on the side there. This is really handy, right? It will automatically drill down. These guys did a heck of a job on building these things. I mean, hands down to them, right? I mean, this stuff is free. This is pretty amazing, right? But again, if you were looking at this alone, right, what do? Right? Send your help desk guys out to re-image the PC or go hunt for malware or run a scan for 3 or 4 hours with some AV software that they're never going to find anything because there really was never anything evil there to begin with, right? So as security analysts, we got to think about this kind of stuff, and we got to take a little extra moment, and if we can optimize how we do this process, right, we can cut down the next guy's job, that much better, right? So it's always about making the next guy's job easier. So just kind of some lessons learned, right? So these are just some very high level, and there's probably a much longer list than this, but just from kind of the talk, right? So first off is that, IDS and IPS devices only trigger on events if there's a rule for that event, right? So that is for snort, Circata, that kind of stuff, right? Now, Bro's a little different. Bro will track every single event that goes on, and it will create you a connection log of everything, right? It is an authoritative truth of what happens on your network. But remember that the things that are firing on rules, they only go if something actually bad happens, or somebody wrote a rule for it. It doesn't always have to be bad. An alert does not always mean that traffic made it to its destination, right? I have another demo in here if I had time to show you. You can fire things off and hit ports that aren't valid, and it'll still fire the rule. Because again, some of these rules are so simply written, You know, they just look for certain patterns. That it was ABC followed by 1, 2, 3. Yep, fire it off. Right? So you can be hunting things down that never actually make it to where they need to go. Right? Unless the rules are written a little more complicated or put a little bit more logic into them, you know, you don't. They're not always indicative that something actually happened. Right? And then that whole point on they're not indicative of what's telling you. Right? If our alert, as we saw, is this is a Trojan in our network. It's calling an IRC channel. Must be a command and control. Right? We always go right for the evil first. Well, not necessarily the case, right? It's literally, and I actually found the site, literally it was just a guy listening to the radio and they used IRC as a chat, right? Now, I'm pretty old, so I did a whole lot on IRC. I totally get what it is, right? Some people today go, well, I don't know what that is, right? So, okay. Because we're talking PCAP tools, I just want to throw this out there. TCP dump, you can use it to do all kinds of crazy stuff, right? I mean, here I'm just doing simple packet captures and whatnot, but it's a great analyst tool. There is a SANS course. If you guys go take it, I took it. It was really fun. Mike Poor did a great job. And we spent 2 days literally just pounding through TCP dump. And getting in and actually reading every hex byte and figuring out and deciphering it by hand without Wireshark, right? Which to me, being a total dork, loved it, right? TCP rewrite allows you to rewrite your packet. So this, and even in some of these examples here, or some of the other ones, you can take packets from one network, pull them over here, you can rewrite them, so you can say anything on the 10.da-da-da-da, whatever network, I want it to all be 192. It'll rewrite the packet for you, fix all the checksums, and then you can replay it, right? Which then goes down to the 2 apps down, which is TCP replay, which actually allows you to suck in and replay packets on the network, right? So now you can take your PCAPs, maybe something didn't alert, but you at least got the packet capture for it. You can go write your signature rules and you can fire it off multiple times. You don't have to sit around and wait for the bad guys to attack again or wait for something to happen, right? So you can just take the same thing and keep replaying it back. You can also, by the way, use Snort and Bro and bring in PCAPs and it'll analyze it for you directly. MergeCap is something that, Sigi Tools uses on the backside. So if the way NetSniff-NG stores all the files is it keeps all your little packet captures in a bunch of little files, and you designate during the install how big you want that to be. I think the default's like 150 megs. I think on my little VM here, it's like I made like 10 megs. But the point is like in our universe where you have these really huge sensors, we're watching a lot of data. Within 1 second, we could crush through like 10 or 1,150 meg files, right? And so if I'm just looking for like a 60-second window, I could be looking across all kinds of PCAPs when I want to go and export that. Well, what MergeCap will do, what Sigi Tools does is it kind of automates the process for you. And all it does is it goes down and it runs a TCP filter, it replays them and says, I'm only looking for this based upon a Berkeley packet filter, which is a way that you can kind of say this source, this destination. If you don't know it, look it up. But the idea then is you can bring this stuff in and then you can save them out into a file and then you can merge them all together in one stream and now you have one PCAP, which is your whole communication. You don't have like 50 little teeny tiny PCAPs that you got to look at individually, right? And then Foremost, and there's some other tools that do this. Foremost is actually like a carving tool. It'll actually reach into the PCAP and export like, executables or other things and pull things out of it. There's some other versions of this, but Foremost is one of the ones that's been around for a while. Just because I run stuff on Windows, because I have a different type of job. Most of you probably do Linux and Macs, and I get it. So, Wireshark, if you don't know it, learn it, live it, breathe it. It's awesome, right? There's all kinds of stuff here that you can do with it. I found this other really cool tool called Wire Edit. I was a bit shocked by this. This thing was pretty awesome. It's a what you see, what you get packet capture editor, because I was looking for a way to take some of my actual PCAPs and change some of the information inside besides the source destination address. I wanted to actually change the content inside of them, like change domain names to Contoso or whatever it is, demo.com. The Wire Edit will let you do that. It is pretty amazing. Network Miner is another tool that actually lives on Security Onion, and you can download it for Windows and other operating systems. You can feed it a PCAP, and it'll kind of show you the session information. It'll break things out for you, give you the files and all that kind of stuff on the thing. Be careful with that on Windows because it will export all of the malicious binaries if they are in there, and you don't want to double click. Just saying. Okay. So let's empower our users, right? So I'm going to switch just a little bit here and do a little bit of soapbox. in sitting in the role that I sit in, I see kind of a unique way of looking at the world, because I'm the ultra dork, but I also sit and I deal with all the executives, and I deal with my end users, and I deal with other larger problems on a daily basis. And one of the things that I kind of find is that as a community and as an industry, right, I don't think we communicate very well to our end users. I don't think the vendors that don't communicate to very us. My example, is the emerging threat kind of post, right? What's the context around that, right? It would be great if whoever found that said, hey, these are the kind of botnets, or these are the kind of things that do this, right? To give me more research. I mean, it was like a dead end. Like, here you go. Somebody's talking on an IRC channel, right? But it's a Trojan. They're saying it's bad, right? So it's kind of like, we need to get that message out. We need to kind of work with ourselves and each other a little bit more to get this message to kind of educate and share a little bit better. And with that being said, I did create a tool that helps with phishing, so I'm going to steer this a little bit towards phishing. And I did this with a very good friend of mine, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Jeffrey A. Martin. Jeffrey has been in IT for like 35 years. He kind of got out a while ago, and now he's doing like psychology and neuroscience, and he's been to Harvard. He kind of got away from IT, and now he just kind of does research on like why the brain does the things that it does. But it's always nice to talk to fellow people that look at the world in a little different way. And we came up with this tool around how to kind of educate our users and help them with phishing. But we always start with this kind of a principle, right? Which is a problem well stated is a problem half solved, right? Because you got to know what you're trying to solve before you're trying to get there, right? Think of the goal in mind, or well, I'm Joe, so I would always go back to my childhood, right? And knowing is half the battle, right? That's right. So when we think about phishing, right, what do we all do, right? We buy appliances, we put them at our gateways, we block certain extensions that we don't let them kind of come through. We put on SPF records, DKIM, we do antivirus, we do sandboxing. We hire phishing companies to phish our people, fool our people into clicking things, and then we give them training after the fact, right? And then we do our annual, hey, don't click on stuff, that kind of stuff. We also go out to the internet. If you go search and you look for things, these are my favorite bad examples of things like, don't click on any hyperlink in any email, because that's practical. Verify that the HTTPS is on your address bar, because that has everything to do with phishing. Obviously keep your antivirus up to date, anti-spyware, I get all that. My favorite one is install and maintain the reliable firewall, because, if we could just stop mail from flowing altogether, it would stop the phishing problem. And might as well just unplug the systems, which is the next rate to that one. Some of the better kind of comments, right, and these are all true, right, is watch for heightened or urgent requests, that hyper, go click on me now. You look for spelling mistakes, although they're getting better at, fixing those kind of things, right? Unfamiliar greetings, inconsistencies in email addresses, which every user misses, right? And then, the one you always watch for is be wary of suspicious or shady attachments, kind of like that one. M&M folks, there you go. Yeah. Look for the reply to address. I can't tell you how many people are fooled by the spoofed in as, hey, your executive wants you to go do this, and then they reply to some other thing at yahoo.com, right? And then obviously don't do login credentials or whatever. And when in doubt, we always tell our users forward it to IT, right? Now this poses a new problem, right? Essentially what we're doing is there's one of me, or let's say a crew of me, right? Because some of my crew's in the back there. And we're basically telling, there's 70,000 plus people in my company, right? So I'm telling 70,000 people, oh, hey, just send your mail to me. I'll look at it for you, right? Like that's how I really need to spend my day, right? And this is why the problem exists. And so what do, right? They say, well, hey, I received a message. Is it phishing or not? And if they say no, they go what? They click on it, right? And then what do? We mitigate malware on the bottom, right? And if they do think it's phishing, then they go and they follow that path over to the right and they say, well, let's just send it to IT. And then IT goes and does a whole bunch of work. And then we go and try to hunt down and find our users to tell them what it is we found. And by that point in time, they've already clicked on it. We mitigate malware, right? So, and I know I'm being a little bit, flippant in a way, but there's some truth there, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. But what do we do, right? So we get these things, and we all kind of do the same thing, right? Now maybe your list is a little different than my list, if this is the short one, right? But on attachments, if there's an attachment there, we'll take it out, we'll hash that attachment, we'll look it up at VirusTotal, right? Maybe if it's an Office document type or whatever, we'll tear it apart and look at it and try to see if there's any scripts or other types of, malicious thing in it. We might run it through a sandbox, right? Or we'll reverse engineer something. If it's got a URL, we'll do the common sense thing, like, well, where did it come from? If it came from, UPS and it goes back to like, Jim's, fitness shop, it's probably not UPS, right? And we just kind of use common sense in a way, right? And we always have to find that user, right? And depending upon how big your organization is, that's sometimes tough. But there's got to be a better way, right? And this is what my solution to that better way is, right? So it's something that we created, Jeffrey and I created, and we called Scanfish. Today it's in alpha testing. If you go to scanfish.com or scanfish.io, eventually we will put it out there. We're going to make this available, at least a free version of it, to kind of help people, because I look at people like my mom who always call me, because that's the other user, and she's always, hey, is this bad? I'm like, you already clicked on it, so it doesn't matter, kind of a deal. So, but the goal of Scanfish, right, was to educate my end users, right, is to do something a little different than all the companies are doing now, and it's also to empower my team and IT in a way. Right? Because let's face it, right? We get phishing in, and then it infects our end users, and I'm telling you, those gateways don't stop 100% of everything, right? So you will always end up with stuff in your inbox, right? And then you're stuck with this problem. And if you have a very large environment, is the time between, okay, we know it started happening at this time, my users show up to the office at this time, and then they have another 4.5 hours to click on things before I can go run that Microsoft PowerShell to delete that message out of everybody's mailbox, and hopefully I caught them all, right? I mean, it's a nightmare, and there's nothing really great to solve this. So this hopefully will help with that, right? It also gives you kind of real-time feedback, right? So the way that it does it is in this case, it's an Outlook add-in. It adds a couple of buttons. We call the buttons the help button. It's the human explanation of learned pattern. The idea here is to try to teach the end user a little bit about what they're seeing, to give them a little bit more of a control or context around the email, and why we're checking it, right? And so the way that I validated this is, of course, I write it all in my super geek speak, and then I give it to my wife, and she goes, what the hell does that mean? And then it takes me 4 or 5 hours to explain to her IT stuff. And then she goes, yeah, you're doing this so wrong. And then she rewrites it, right? I should have worn my other shirt, which says, I don't need Google, I have my wife, right? So then what happens here is that little icon will change colors based upon the threat level, right? So if it's green, you're generally good. If it's red, it's automatically bad. We should just throw it away. And so a lot of this stuff is configurable. And then inside of every message, because we really, really want you to kind of get the point, is we put a bar over at the top of the message. And you'll see this in a second. But the idea here is that depending upon the severity, and then you can click on the little see more link and it'll pull up another window. And I think the best way to demonstrate this is I actually have a working demo. So what you see here, so this is actually my inbox as of last night, right? So I spoofed these little emails, because you can spoof anything you want. So this is Mr. Evil sending me a message, right? Of course, they send me this nice survey.doc file. It's not a doc file, it's a PE file, right? Which is amazing that I actually got it through the mail gateway, because it is an executable. And it says, hey, and obviously the link here is someevilplace.com, right? So we'd all IT guys go, yeah, just delete. The users probably already clicked on this thing, filled out the survey, sent it to their buddies. So if you click on the link here, though, what it does, it pulls up this little window. This is the help context, and then the interface might change over the next few months, but the concept here is it's kind of showing you like all the mail servers that it went through. So it takes your header information, it tries to translate it for you, tell you what's good, what's bad, tells you kind of how many times you've talked to somebody. It does actually learn who you talk to, what the normal patterns are, so it knows what's weird or what's different. And then down at the bottom for every attachment, it's gonna automatically hash the file for you. And in this case, it's gonna tell you, like, for example, that this is a PE file, right? So it says the attached file contains a program or executable, and it kind of says it's bad, right? And it shouldn't be that way. It's a doc, right? So like, why is this a PE? And you click on it, you go to VT, and it doesn't know what it is. Trust me, this thing is bad, right? I actually set myself something really evil just to see if it'd block it, right? Nobody knows that it's evil yet. And so what you can do here is you can take this and you can do like the default. Okay, we know this is bad enough. It screamed at us. Let's forward this over to IT. We send it to IT. There's a whole server side to this piece, right, that you can go to, and when I actually implemented Yara rules, or a form of them, right, so that you can do Yara type rules back on every single endpoint. And so in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the PE one that I had set that made the alert level to high, and I'm going to set it to critical. Now what it's going to do is Scanfish is automatically going to know, hey, if something is critical, just throw it away, because the end user really shouldn't have it, right? So I set this as critical, I save it on the server, and then we're going to go back to the client. We're just going to sit and we're going to wait a minute. And then the client checks into the server every periodically and kind of says, hey, do you have any new rules for me, something update, just kind of, keep it like a heartbeat. And what you'll see will happen is that middle message is just going to magically disappear, right? So we're going to give it a minute because this is pretty much real time, right? And so as that client will check in, it'll reanalyze that message and bam, there it goes, it's gone, right? And that's using Yara to kind of look at the actual attachment. Now it's not writing the attachments out, so I'm not doing all these crazy things. I'm actually looking at it in the PST file, right? Now here's the example of the inbox, right? So now we wrote this rule because this campaign is still going on, right? And I haven't quite figured out how to stop it, but I at least know what some of the signatures are. And again, I can use Yara, so I can do some crazy stuff. So here it is coming in. This is the same message. Scanfish is going to look at it, and it's going to go, oh, that was bad. It's going to throw it away automatically, right? The end user didn't have to open it, right? So a couple of points right this, right? So what's the point, right? The point here is, and the whole kind of concept for why I did this, right? And actually, I kind of been thinking about this idea for more than a year now. It's taken me the last year to get to this point from the development point of view. I will tell you, I was sitting out on the tables literally at Derbycon because my certificate expired on Friday, right? Because that's when I bought the certificate for this to set this thing up, right? But the whole point around this is that we need to get better at working with our end users, and we need to get better at working ourselves, right? Because again, 70,000 people are sending me emails saying, Joe, will you please check this? Right? If I can get 1% of them to be smarter, right? I've already got a larger IT staff now looking at email in a better way than I've ever imagined ever affording anywhere, right? So if you can just educate them just a little bit. I mean, I realize that you're still going to have the same people, and trust me, they're really smart people, because they are, and they just click on things, because it's just what they do, right? I mean, I've got attorneys. I had an attorney the other day do it, and very, very smart person, right? It's just what we do. It's just human nature. We see it. We want to get in. We want to get our work done. We want to move. That's when mistakes happen, right? It just happens, right? But the whole point here is that we got to get better at communicating, right? We got to get better at helping our users. We got to come up with new ways to teach each other, and we got to have new ways to teach, people, right? I mean, just one more little example here, right? Before I'm almost out of time, is I wanted to download a file the other day, right? I wanted, a portable tools, right? You do a little USB stick, right? I wanted a little color picker off the screen so I could make things match in my little demo here. And Symantec was nice enough to say, hey, this thing's weird. But even Symantec goes, but I don't know what to do. Our stuff is inconclusive. And I'm like, now I think to myself, well, is that really a useful message or not? I'm like, look, you're the AV vendor. When you're telling me it's inconclusive and you want me to make the decision? Because I was pretty confident in my decision when I wanted to download to begin with. Now you're making me nervous, right? So, we got to think about how we're communicating to each other, right? And this goes for every vendor and us. Right? At least if you go back to some really old error messages, this one was just straight up honest, right? Look, there's no help, you're screwed. Have a good day. Right? And that's a decade old, right? This is at least a little more fun, right? I always love the Unix messages. Right? This one's just Windows loves cookies. Just wants to know when it's going to get his cookie. So that's pretty much my talk. Hopefully that was useful and made it worth your while. I do appreciate your time. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. This inbox gets spammed like there is no tomorrow, so put something like, hey, I saw you at Derbycon or something like that. That makes you not look like a robot. And I will do my best to respond to you. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm a little hard of hearing, so you have to super speak up. But other than that, thank you very much. Try to be safe getting home. And go Derbycon. Sir?
So a user submits an email through your tool. I'm certain that
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, this is the dilemma always, right? I mean, and now I'm not saying that my tool is a replacement for all those other tools, right? Defense in depth, right? It's just another layer to try to